In this episode, we speak with Russ Roenick, co-founder and managing partner at Transom Capital Group, an operationally focused private equity firm known for thriving in complexity and unlocking value in the middle market. Based in Los Angeles, Transom specializes in corporate carve-outs and lender-owned businesses. Supported by an in-house operations team with deep functional expertise, the firm partners with management teams to transform and grow companies across business services, industrials, consumer, and specialty distribution. Transom was most recently recognized by GrowthCap as a top private equity firm of 2025. I'm your host, RJ Lumba. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you liked the episode, click to follow.
RJ Lumba is the managing partner of GrowthCap and the executive chairman of Market Insight Media. He is the host of Growth Investor, a podcast featuring today's best investors, executives, and founders. In the minutes ahead, we'll uncover insights and strategies for accelerating growth and succeeding in business.
Russ, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. It's a delight to be with you.
Great to meet you too. Super to be here.
You've run a really unique kind of strategy, I think, when I take a look at Transom in the context of various private investment firms out there. And by that, I mean you focus on complexity, complex situations, maybe where other investors may not be focused. So for the benefit of our audience, tell us about that kind of concept of complexity and how you think about, maybe opportunistic situations.
Yeah, it's such a great question. I think that is probably the right word to use to describe us. Complexity can be at the outset of the transaction, meaning how do you get in and how do you price the transaction appropriately given some of the unique dynamics or circumstances that you're entering through. Meaning complexity for us at the front end of the transaction is, buying a business from a lender or in conjunction with a lender. Complexity could be a corporate carve-out where you're taking a division of a much larger business and separating it from the parent company. It could be through a public to private, take private transactions. Those are the different forms of complexity at the front end of our process that we sort of look for and thrive in. And then thereafter, there's always a whole mess of operational complexity, right? And so the operational complexity could be a company that has a supply chain problem or a need for a Salesforce transformation or a digital transformation or a variety of other things that our operations team would say that they feel like they're world-class in delivering those types of outcomes. And so, for us, complexity sort of runs the gamut across all the various stages of the investment lifecycle for what we do.
And maybe take us back to the early days of Transom, because you've been around for a while and your progression in terms of your firm and fund sizes has been remarkable. But tell us about those early days. Did you, at that time, head straight in for complex situations?
The answer is sort of, right? It's like somewhere in between. What I would say is, my partner, Ken, and I, the first thing that we did to introduce complexity into our business here at Transom is we probably started the business when we were way too young. For me, for example, I was 30 years old when we started the business. And prior to that, I was working at McKinsey & Company. I was a junior partner there. I thought I had an answer to every one of the world's most complex problems. And when you actually start to get back into the real world, and you're talking about real businesses, smaller in size, smaller in scope, limited resources, a lot of complexity that comes along with that. We have to go through this grand awakening, right? And so like so many other entrepreneurs who were young, we were naive, we didn't have nearly enough tread on the tire going into business. But at the same time, the flip side of that is you don't know what you don't know. And so you take inordinate risk that, if you had known about it, you wouldn't have jumped in at first. And so that was the early days in getting off the ground of the business. And we started off looking for a degree of complexity. Did we know that it would ultimately take the form of a corporate carve-out or buying from a lender or otherwise? Did we know that we'd have this menu of core operational transformations that we really feel world-class in delivering? Of course, at the beginning, no, right? That was all part of the evolution of our business. And so it's been not just us as entrepreneurs who have evolved and grown, but obviously we've grown our team, right? We've grown our team to 30 plus people at this point, and thank God they're all stellar. That gives you so many additional capabilities, and it gives you the ability to not just work in the business and focus on the problems of the day, but step back and be able to work on the business, in terms of growing the company and thinking about other ways to empower folks and different types of deals that you can go chase, which is kind of where we're at today.
Tell us about kind of the sectors you focus on. And then it seems like you have a fair degree of flexibility in terms of what you would consider, including size of deal. But, maybe we'll start with kind of sectors first.
Yeah. So you're spot on. So, right, from a sector perspective, we're pretty flexible, right? If you look through the portfolio of existing assets and exited assets, we've almost done a little bit of everything, so to speak. There are some specific sectors that we would say not for us, meaning heavy commodity exposure, heavy government regulation, industries that are in transition, and certainly industries that are in decline. We don't touch those industries. So we kind of define what we do almost by exclusion. But certainly for the wide range of industries that are included, there's also power alleys that we have where we've done a number of deals over and over again, have a business model, have a plan, have a team of people that really know the underlying industry, like hardware technology or IT services, specialty distribution, and several others, where when those types of deals come through the door, we get particularly excited about it. So that's kind of our view on industry. But the overlay and almost the area that we focus on more so than industry is, what's the opportunity for the business, right? Or the flip side of that is what's discontinuity that the business is facing? What's the sort of operational challenge? And does that marry against the capabilities of our team to go solve that challenge? And so we tend to think about 5 very straightforward types of operational transformations that our operations team goes after. And then there's an overlay of all those various things. And so, the menu for us is we're looking for businesses where we can drive revenue growth in one of 3 ways. It's Salesforce transformation, digital transformation, and new product innovation. Those are the ways that we think about driving revenue growth. There's plenty of other ways to drive revenue growth, but those don't necessarily fall within the expertise of our team. The 4th area is supply chain, right? So how do we impact gross margin, whether that be through running an RFP or moving a factory or doing a value engineering exercise in the product, right? Whatever we need to do to basically expand gross margin. And then the 5th is obviously cost reduction. So getting into the SG&A through the trial balance and benchmarking that against what we consider to be best in class, and then putting in cash control towers and spend control towers to make sure all those things happen. So those are the 5 very specific things that we feel really good about and good at. And then the overlay across all of those, the 6th transformation is around talent, right? So we have a chief talent officer here. All she does is evaluate talent inside of our portfolio for the opportunities that we're looking at. And then she goes out to the market and she recruits new folks, right? And we have a proprietary methodology for how we screen and how we sort of drill down into the candidates because, realistically, most recruiting processes, it's you hire somebody, it ultimately is 50-50 in terms of whether it works or not. And step back from that, we said, gosh, if we can do 70-30, right? If even we could do 60-40, there's so much value that could bring to our investors. It takes a tremendous amount of stress off of our operations team if we have better operators inside the businesses on a day-to-day basis. It just felt like exponential benefit. And so we invested a lot of time and money and mind share in sort of trying to crack the code on how to recruit better. I think we're there now. Obviously, people are at the heart of success of any business. And for us, we buy businesses that have some sort of challenge potentially at the outset where we might need to bring in an additional few members of the team to supplement the existing management team. And so getting great at recruiting was something that was a core focus for us for many years. I think we're there now.
Super helpful. And is there an example of a company? I'm trying to see if we could tap into each of those 6 elements that you mentioned. It's interesting because you have a consulting background and it's almost as if you can go into a situation and in a very short order, figure out everything that needs to be fixed and then bring in the appropriate people from your team, almost a quick SWAT team, go in and let's start fixing this day one. But is there a good example you could share with us?
Yeah, that is a great characterization of the way that we sort of see these businesses and then the way that we attack thereafter, right? It starts with that like top down, trying to identify the problem that you want to solve and then determining whether you have the right talent and resources and know how to go after it. So you nailed it. I would say every deal that we do has various elements off of that menu. I can't think of one. We don't like to see the patient when they're like on the operating table, chest is sort of pulled open and like you can see all their organs. We like to get to a business before it's in that condition of like, having its triple bypass surgery. So usually they don't need all of those solutions that I rattled off that are on our operational menu. But a great one from several years ago is that, we invested in a business called Pelco. Pelco was a security camera and software provider. It was a corporate carve out from a much larger parent company called Schneider Electric. And it was a thorny one from a carve out perspective, meaning very intermingled and intertwined with the parent company. Our mantra or calling card is we're just trying to make it as easy as we can on the seller, on the parent company, so that as we separate the business, it does not basically become a big distraction for them, right? That's oftentimes like in a carve out scenario, that's oftentimes the biggest consideration that a seller has is like, just, okay, I got it. We're moving on from that asset, but please don't make it a huge distraction along the way. And so there was a tremendous amount of heavy lifting that we had to do in that regard. But from an operations perspective, we had a business that had declining revenue. Mm-hmm. We had a business where it had pretty good gross margins to start, but we knew there was an opportunity to make those better. And then it had tremendous cost SG&A load, right? And so it definitely had many of those different elements off of the menu. We brought in a new CEO who was sales focused. His name is Kurt Takahashi. This is 5, 6, 7 years ago. He's still one of my best friends. He did an amazing job. He was a sales-focused CEO. He came in and he took that ship from having a 5-year period of revenue decline to getting it flat, to getting it growing, all within the first 12 to 15 months of our ownership period. We did a massive supply chain overhaul where we essentially saw that there was this big disconnect between the engineering team that was headquartered here in the States and the manufacturing line that was in Taiwan. The teams couldn't talk, they couldn't connect fast enough, they couldn't collaborate. And so as a function of that, the company was always 1 or 2 generations behind in its product development process. We collapsed those teams into one unified team to expedite communication. And all of a sudden we were able to leap forward in our technology roadmap and get to be on par and then actually a little bit ahead of the competition, all within that 12 to 15 month frame. Mm-hmm. And from a cost perspective, just taking out SG&A is generally a lot faster. So within the first 60 days, we probably took $10 million or more of SG&A out of that business just by operating it like a responsible parent, to sort of like putting real attention and focus on that asset. We're not cutting things down to the bone. We're not cutting it to muscle. We're just trying to be reasonable in terms of how we own and operate the businesses. So all those things came together. And I chose this example because all those things came together very quickly. And this was a business that we bought and sold, which can be a rarity, within 15 months. And we sold that business to Motorola, who's also was in the process of building a massive sort of video surveillance camera and software platform of their own. I know firsthand it's been a tremendous success on their watch as well. And so it was kind of a win-win. It was a win for the seller, right, who just kind of like couldn't get it figured out. It was obviously a win for us in that we were able to effectuate our model so quickly. Like, not oftentimes do you get all the work done and have this bluebird fly through the window so quickly as we did, but we were fortunate here. And then on a long-term, ongoing basis, it's been a great deal for the strategic acquirer to take it down.
That's a great example. And did all of this calculus kind of come together at the front end, meaning when you were looking at this opportunity, even though the maybe product was lagging and even though there was a lot of cost and revenues were declining, you said, well, wait a second, we know this area and the product is good enough, or maybe the product is great. It's just the customer base is there. They're not going away. And we know if we turn this around, we could sell it to like 3 to 5 parties. Was that calculus there in the beginning?
100%. So that's all the work that we do during due diligence. And to your point around the 3 to 5 parties and we sell it to them, oftentimes when we're competing to buy a business, we're mostly competing with other strategics in that process. And they tend to sort of get concerned or scared away from the complexity that we talked about at the outset of the call, right? It's not their business to know how to navigate that type of work. And so we're sort of left as the last man standing. And we can basically do the heavy lifting, do the hard work, separate the business, work through the lender issues, execute that sort of public to private transaction, whatever it may be at the front end, and then put our operations team to work at solving more of the operational complexities of the business thereafter. And then we can deliver a very clean, growing asset back to that same group of strategic acquirers we competed with to begin with, right? And we can do it relatively quickly over a 3 to 5 year period of time. That has been a highly successful model for us. In the last 5 years, we've only sold businesses to strategics during that window of time. So we've absolutely love and thrive in that sort of like high level model. And to sort of like finish off the answer to your question in terms of like the work that we do up front, it's all rooted in the data, right? It's rooted in the data and it's rooted in industry expertise and it's rooted in our team's pattern recognition across the menu of transformational opportunities that they really know how to go. So it's like you sort of got that Venn diagram of those 3 different dynamics that are always at play. And if something sort of fits within the center of that Venn diagram, makes for a great transaction for us.
Mm-hmm. We're entering the tail end of the conversation, but before I ask the last 2 questions, given how your approach is pretty unique, I would say, in the marketplace of private investing, how competitive is it? Are you finding yourself in situations where it's like, hardly anyone's going to be able to crack this nut or be able to undertake this situation? Or do you have competitive situations? There's other transoms out there. We know there are other transoms out there, but like with what you look at specifically, do you find that there's multiple other parties at the table?
Yeah. There's definitely what I would say limited competition out there for what we do. There's competition, of course, but it's definitely more limited in that when we're submitting an LOI to prospectively acquire a business, they may be getting 3 LOIs. They're not getting a dozen, as you might see in other situations where you're buying it. Super clean, growing, set it and forget it type business where you don't have to do a lot of work. You just kind of have to put a lot of trust in the management team and expect them to keep doing what they've historically done. So our deal is obviously quite different than that. There's other folks out there that are looking for the kind of things that we're looking at. We haven't run across one that likes all the various sort of aspects that, is able to insert a high degree of flexibility on the front end in terms of the type of deals they do, that has the same operational sort of menu that I've rattled off and referenced a number of times. And that also has the flexibility around industry, right? If you look through our portfolio, we've done a handful of hardware technology businesses, right? We own a business called Mackie that was in the audio space. Pelco that I just referenced, right? Security hardware. You don't see a lot of people focus on that, as well as, we're also willing to do specialty distribution. We're also willing to look at an education-oriented asset. And so I just think having that sort of flexibility as well from an industry perspective is helpful. What it means is you can't take a narrow balance sheet only view of managing risk. You have to have a view of managing risk that's broader than that, which I think, a lot of value-oriented investors, it's easier and they prefer to just focus exclusively on the balance sheet, and we get it. And there's plenty of times when that's appropriate, but I think we've sort of built a business model that allows us to be a little bit broader and wider and look at a more diverse set of opportunities than others.
Excellent. Last 2 questions. One is, can you tell us about a person who's had a profound influence on you?
It's cliched, but it's my dad. My dad had passed away 5 years ago. My dad was a car salesman in my small hometown in what I'll call almost upstate New York, north of the city. And my dad brought humor to every single thing he did. This car dealership he worked at was kind of like his clubhouse where all his buddies would sort of come in and cycle through every day and hang out. Even while he's working, they're hanging out. And he always built such a positive culture around him. he wasn't the most successful dude, but he was always happy and he always brought happiness and joy to the others that were around him. And we tried to build a similar type of culture here where everybody here at our firm, I think they really love working with one another. It's a very close-knit team and there's a lot of laughs that we get to have together. Although I wouldn't say like the industry and the job that he did is that related to what I do today. Certainly his approach is something I try to like carry with me over the years.
Last question. Can you tell us about a charity, cause, or other endeavor that you're passionate about?
Yeah. So I don't know if it's a charity or a cause, but it's something that I spend a lot of time doing outside of the office, which is I'm in an organization called YPO, which is Young Presidents Organization. We do a lot of charitable work through that organization. We try to give back. And for me, it's been so profound in terms of, one, my leadership journey and being with a group of people, in particular, my forum of 8 or 9 folks that have been very stable over the years and have had a tremendous impact on me in terms of sharing their experience and advice around how to be a better leader. Amazing. And then secondarily to that, we've been able to do so many unique things in terms of giving back to especially the local Los Angeles community here. And it's been incredibly rewarding.
Awesome. Well, Russ, I want to thank you again for taking the time to chat with us today. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Appreciate it. Yeah, great to talk to you.